What is going on, everybody? Been a diehard Pistons fan since '03 and eager to see this team getting back to playing winning basketball. In today's video, we are going to discuss a piece that was written regarding the Detroit Pistons win total by John Hollinger. We're going to briefly talk about John Hollinger's history, why this is relevant and important for the Pistons, and then we'll go over into the reasons why he thinks what he thinks regarding the Pistons. So to kind of zoom out and back up here a little bit, John Hollinger is a former NBA executive. He was vice president of basketball operations for the Memphis Grizzlies. He is very well respected in the NBA circle. He created the metric PER, which a lot of you I'm sure are familiar with. He created the game score, was very much ahead of the curve on the advanced analytics in the 2000s-ish era, and was kind of one of the pioneers of that stuff. So why are we talking about this today? Well, for a couple different reasons. One, he has been historically very critical over the Pistons' current rebuild. He definitely was very critical about a lot of moves that Troy Weaver made, a lot of the lineups we ran last year, and just generally was not a fan of what we had cooking over the past couple of years. But two, and most importantly, is that I want to show you all the stuff that I've been saying on this channel all summer regarding the Detroit Pistons, the likelihood of crossing their win total and all of that type of stuff, isn't me just being a homer. And even former NBA executives who have historically been down on the current Pistons team and rebuild are starting to see the vision with the Pistons. So a lot of the stuff that he talks about in this article are things that we've talked about on this channel. But to kind of kick things off and paraphrase what he wrote, the article, it was all about teams that are likely to beat their Vegas win total. So the Pistons, of course, is 24.5, and he thinks that they will be going over that. So the first thing that he touches on is something that we've talked about on this channel this summer, and it's about how laughably easy it is to not lose 58 games in the Eastern Conference. So I've said it plenty of times, and I'll reiterate it again. A lot of Pistons fans are scarred and traumatized from the past 4 or 5 seasons that they have forgotten how easy it is to win 20, 25, 30 games in the NBA. It's just the nature of an 82-game season. Last year, the Memphis Grizzlies had Ja Morant for 6 games. Desmond Bane was playing for like 30 of them. The rest of the year, they had Jaren Jackson out there with a bunch of two-way guys and G Leaguers that even I don't know. And that's saying a lot because I can normally name almost everybody who's currently playing in the NBA. Last year, I would turn on the Grizzlies and there would be multiple players on the floor where I had to Google them to figure out who they were. They still managed to win almost 30 games last season. It is very easy to trip, fall, and stumble your way into a 25-game win season in the NBA. And Pistons fans have just seemed to have forgotten that because somehow, some way, we have managed to fail to hit that mark for 4 seasons. I've been watching the league for a long time, and I know a lot of things have changed over the past couple of years, but it's very uncommon that a team loses as many games as the Pistons have lost last year or even the year before. Most years, the worst team in the NBA has like 23 or 24 wins. I know that's historically kind of changing a little bit, but not that much. There's a lot of really bad teams that have played over the years that have tripped, fallen, and stumbled their way into 25 or 30 wins, especially considering in the Eastern Conference today. So that's something he touched on, and I can't agree with it more. And then after that, he kind of went on to talk about how low the bar is, and then also, of course, touching on the new coaching staff and GM. He kind of threw a little bit of shade on the previous regime of Troy Weaver and Monty Williams. And then after that, he brought up the fact that the Pistons had been injured a lot last year and that had played a factor into why they were historically bad. He brought up the fact that only 2 players on the roster played more than 63 games last season. He was quoted saying, "Usually, that's one area in which a young rebuilding team doesn't have issues, but the 2023-24 Pistons were special regarding injuries." So I agree with that. When you kind of think back on it, Cade, of course, rested quite a few games. I think he played 62 games last season. Isaiah Stewart failed to play 50 games. Jaden Ivey was relatively healthy, but he had a stretch where he was out for a couple weeks sick. Of course, starting off the year, Bo Young was hurt for the first 20 or 30 games. And then after that, we traded for Simone Fontecchio. He played for 16 games and then he got shut down. So, like you mentioned, the Pistons had really bad health for their key players last year, and that played a role into as many losses as they ended up with. So, after that, he touched on the fact that there's not a lot of elite talent, but when looking at the numbers last year, a lot of the lineups that consisted of a lot of the guys who were gone, like Killian Hayes and James Wiseman, who were named, were the lineups that really were the ones that stuck out and were pretty terrible. He talks about the lineups that didn't include Killian Hayes and James Wiseman looking more like a run-of-the-mill bad team as opposed to a historically bad team. And that I definitely agree with and want to dive into more before we start the season, but with the outlook of how that information can kind of build lineups for the future. So, spoiler alert, the next video is going to be on this channel most likely, if not the video after that, will be about the most successful lineups from last year and the likelihood that we see them this year and if there's any twists to improve them, because he's totally right. You can go on B-Ball Reference and look at the Pistons lineups from last year. The lineups that actually made a little bit of sense as far as shooting and spacing, their offensive rating and defensive rating led to net ratings that weren't that bad. Of course, the Pistons, historically bad team, it's a low bar, but the lineups that really got ran off the floor last year mostly included the players that are all already off this team. So definitely something to keep in mind. And then also after that, the last thing he kind of touches on is just the fact that there's other really bad teams in the Eastern Conference that are going to be trying to tank harder this year than they did last year, not only just because Cooper Flagg and it's a better draft class, but teams like the Nets and the Wizards are on full-on tank mode, and then teams such as the Hornets, Bulls, and Raptors not exactly being poised to take the league by storm. So that's pretty much what he said, is that the 25 win barrier will be going down for the Pistons this year, and I agree with him. So I just thought it was important to make this video because I know I say a lot of this stuff heading into the season about the Pistons potentially winning 30 games this year, and it's pretty easy to look at me as a dude sitting up here wearing a Tigers hat with a Pistons banner in the background, screaming the praises of this team. But realistically, a lot of this stuff that I'm talking about isn't just me being a fan. It's truly what I believe from an unbiased perspective. So I wanted to kind of highlight somebody who has been critical of the Pistons, knowledgeable and respectable around NBA circles, kind of echoing a lot of the stuff that I have been talking about that will be key driving factors for the Pistons improving this upcoming year. So let me know what you guys think. Predict how many wins the Pistons will get this upcoming season in the comments below. I always love reading them. So I'll catch up with y'all very soon.